Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Authentic Conversations with Entrepreneurs. I'm here with Dori Klass, Complexity and Depth Coach, founder of Dori Klass and Associates, and the Whole Person, Whole Power program. I'm Katherine Morales, Authentic Brand Strategist, founder of Inflection Point Communications. And you're probably wondering what an authentic conversation is. Well, it's all about sharing the journey of entrepreneurship. I think it's all about humanizing that journey and exploring what it looks like for different entrepreneurs. So today we're here with Dori Klass, and we are talking about be big, but it's not the kind of big you're probably thinking. So I can't wait to dive into this with you, Dori. Um, so yeah, what does this phrase actually mean to you? When's the first time you heard it? Enlighten us.
Yeah. Um, well, I'd say that my first association is with the word big. And I could even go back to when I was in fifth grade and I was the size I am now. Like I was 5'6.5", 5'7", and a head taller than everybody around me.
Wow.
And I literally had a sense of being very big. Um, but I was surrounded with lots of big people and lots of big personalities. And it was an interesting dynamic because there's an expectation that you show up and meet that energy, but on the other hand, that you stand down and let them shine.
Mm,
And because I was like, as a child especially, I was precocious and curious, and I asked a lot of questions, and that wasn't always appreciated, or
yeah.
it was perceived as being anti-authoritarian or something. And
Mm,
so, there was this, stop being so big, stop pushing so hard, stop asking for so much, stop.
mm,
Just a lot of tamping it down.
mm,
And so I had this kind of not very healthy or positive relationship with big, like being big is wrong, or it's being selfish, or it's taking up too much space, or and that was what my 5-year-old or 12-year-old or 16-year-old mind made up. Those were the stories I made up. Whether that was true or not, whole different issue.
yeah. Did that follow you into adulthood? Like how did that take shape as you got older?
Yeah, there's always that challenge, right? Of when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I mean, it's a biological imperative, right, to fit in and be part of the communities we're a part of to the extent we're able. The challenge
Mhm,
is when we lose ourselves in the process, or when we kind of forget who we are in the middle of that, or
mm,
when there's a reaction to some aspect of who we are, and then in the process we start to have a reaction to it, right?
yeah,
Because it
yeah,
can threaten fitting in. A lot of this is all happening very unconsciously.
yeah,
But it happens. And so that part of me that would push the envelope or ask questions is curious. I didn't understand until much later, even in my corporate life, how much that was a strength too,
mhm,
depending on the situation and who you were with. Like when I was in strategic planning, it was exactly what was needed. It was why I flourished there.
yeah,
So that's part of the work, is having a relationship with these parts of ourselves, our bigness, our smallness, our powerfulness, our powerlessness,
yeah,
and getting out of the stories we make up about it, and just feeling those things, and then
yeah.
asking what's true.
Um, you had a personal experience though where you this had a turning point for you. Can you share some about that?
Yeah, there were a lot of different experiences, but there were two personal experiences in my life that were really substantive. Were when I lost my sister to suicide. I was 24, she was 18. It was tragic, and
Yeah.
um, changed everything for me, for us, for my family, for the people who knew her. Um, but what was really interesting is when people, and like myself or anybody else, goes through these kinds of big events or losses, is what everybody does with that around us after it happens.
Mm,
And um and so I took a little bit of time off from work, the tiniest bit of time, and then I went back to work. And one of the things that I'll remember till the day I die, because it just hit me so deep in my core, was re-entering my workplace, going into Boston for a district meeting, and not having a single person acknowledge that it had happened, that acknowledge my sister, acknowledge the death, acknowledge me, acknowledge anything.
wow.
There were no cards, no flowers, no mention. And um and there's all,
Horrifying.
people have a hard time with suicide, people have a hard time with death, people have a hard time with loss of any kind, and so I understand all of that, but it still didn't change just how deeply invisible I felt and how empty I felt, and how much I became aware of the kind of the unspoken need for things like this to stay, to stay in the background and not and not be brought into certain spaces, or that we just didn't have the capacity to deal with our whole lives and the rest of what
Mm,
was happening. And not that we want that to be front and center, or usurp the intention of the meeting or anything else, but we're whole people with whole experiences and whole lives,
mm.
and some places are better at acknowledging that than others. But that moment for me was horrifying,
I
and
can only
and
imagine.
and just thinking, how can we be in a world full of so many people bumping into each other all the time and not see each other?
Definitely. It's interesting because you use the word invisibility, which I can totally see how that you felt that way. And, I think that whether in that circumstance or others, you hear all the time that in entrepreneurship, everyone wants to, be seen and heard. Is that what bigness is about?
Um, for me, it is. It's about it's about going on that inner journey to wholeness and really knowing your whole self. Whether or not you like all the things you see or all the parts within, it's about getting to know who's there. And what I find with in my own journey in this, because I took myself on this journey myself, and it's kind of what led.
After that experience, right? You're
Yeah,
like, yeah, I'm out of here.
and it's what led to what I now call Whole Person, Whole Power, my multi-year coaching program. But but in my own journey, I had to it was about turning toward those voices, getting to know who's
Mm,
here, starting to have a relationship with each of my parts, the ones I prefer, the
voices
ones I don't.
within.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when now that I've done that, and it's a lifelong journey, but now that I've done a lot of that really intensively, I can call on each of these parts. I can um, channel their energies and their gifts, because they each have gifts, um,
Mhm.
in service of whatever's up for me, whether it's for me within my marriage, with my children, with my clients, just in the world as a neighbor. I can call these forth. I say this as an illustration of parts. There's if you have a heart surgeon, right? They
Mhm.
they need to be able to do harm. Literally, they need to cut through the chest, break open,
So
the
graphic.
bone, the bones, to get to the heart, slice it open, do the.
Yeah.
They have to actually harm to heal. So they have to be in touch
Mm.
with that capacity to penetrate so
Yeah.
deeply.
And there's the complexity for you.
And
And
heal,
conflict
right?
within itself. Yeah.
Yeah, they're struck together. So when I have a relationship with my bigness or my wholeness, that also means I'm having a relationship with the part of me that feels small sometimes, that is desperately needy, that doesn't have competence in some areas, or needs to rely
Mm.
on others for some things, or is sad today. Like it's knowing that I have all of these parts. I'm not just one thing or another.
I love that. I mean, yeah, when you recognize that you have all these parts and all these voices and each one has equal value or worth, I think it's easy to know that you're big, right? So what advice would you give to our viewers and our listeners about how to get in touch with their bigness, how to really embrace their whole selves? 'Cause I know there's those moments for entrepreneurs when maybe you feel like you need to be more or less of who you are, but how do you guide your clients and what advice would you give to them to embrace all of those parts?
Well, I guess there's a few
That
things
was
that.
a loaded question,
It
so
was,
take your
it was.
time with it. This is a very passionate question.
Yeah. What
Take it
do
in
I do
pieces
with
if you
people
would,
for
Dory.
years and years? As um, I think the first thing I'd say is you have to decide you want to.
Mm,
I mean, nothing happens without a decision, and I mean, like, yes with capital letters decision, right?
yeah,
Yes
yeah.
with a capital Y or small letters is a no. So,
Yeah. I
um,
love that.
first we have to decide we want to. We have to get curious. And then second, I say we have to find the courage to look within. And
Mm.
and and for a lot of us, we're struggling with trust of anyone, including ourselves, but we do have to kind of trust that we're gonna love who and what we find. And
Oh, yeah.
and I
I
really
love that.
I know that. I mean, I've just done the work so much with my own children, with my clients, with friends. I mean, I just know we can love who and what we find.
Mhm.
Um, and even if we don't prefer all of it, right? We
Yeah.
can have compassion for our younger self, and we can get to know our inner critic and our persecutor, and go, huh, why are you here today, and what should I be paying attention to? We can interact with them and have a relationship with our parts and let them be messengers, but we have to learn to listen. So one, we have to decide we want to. Two, we
Mhm.
have to have the courage to look within. And three, we have to get curious about, what who and what we find. And what I find, probably four, and maybe it's a little self-serving to say it, but mostly we're stuck in our stories that we've been honing for decades. And it's
Mhm.
really hard to break out of that, even if intellectually we know we need to.
Mhm.
And so, we can't see what we can't see. So we need to be in conscious relationships or conscious communities where there's a commitment to holding each other big, and to
Mm.
holding each other in general, and to see and to being able to articulate what we're seeing that we can't see ourselves. And then we have to
Yeah.
be willing to listen. So there's kind of, I call it holy witnessing and holy listening, but
Mm.
we have to be willing. We need each other to do this work.
Amen.
And so
Yeah.
whether it's, you and me in a dynamic for business and marketing and authentic branding purposes, which has
Mhm.
turned into also a beautiful friendship, but
Mhm.
or it's me with my clients, or it's also with friends. But the friend relationship is different than the client coach relationship, for example. So
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I think, that decision, the courage to look within, the curiosity again, like bringing
I
the
love
child
that word.
mind back,
Yeah.
and then entering into some sort of a partnership, reparative relationship, coach-client dynamic, whatever it is helps
Don't
you
take
go
that journey alone.
that helps you go deeper and see better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be
So,
seen. I mean, it is vulnerable. It's a risk to be seen.
well,
But
as I say, authenticity is vulnerability, and yeah, it's what you're when you get to the core of you, that's requires you to be your whole authentic self.
yeah.
So if we can, I imagine I want to go back for a minute to because I'm sure that people are curious what happened after you entered the office and everyone was like radio silent. Because I can only imagine, in this pandemic, that obviously there have been a lot of losses. And
Mhm,
so I can imagine, granted, it's not suicide, but loss is loss. And
mhm.
to know within these corporate cultures how to handle that, um, how did you handle it? And what would you say to corporations managing this environment and different losses within their teams?
I'm feeling, like, emotional, actually, as you're asking the question, because, I didn't handle it well.
Mm.
Um, I did a lot of things that were, one might argue in retrospect, were dangerous. I made bad choices. I withdrew. I did all the things we do when we're in deep distress and we're trying not to feel all those feelings,
Mm.
and all the ways we numb ourselves that are rarely constructive. And so I'm not proud of that, and I'm not proud of getting so stuck in those patterns that I probably did more I probably sent a few people to therapy myself. I wasn't my best self. In relationships, I feared relationships. I struggled with trust. It took a really long time, and I did kind of do what I see a lot of young people doing right now, is digging their heels and saying, "I don't need anybody," right?
Mm.
Powering through, and
The
it's
independence.
it's not it that I we're a culture that's all about fierce independence and lone wolf, and we buy into the stories that they're self-made, whatever, and it's all a bunch of hooey,
Hoopla.
because
Yeah. Then
nobody
you get
got
old
there.
enough and you realize, no, we need each other.
Yeah, nobody got there all by themselves. It's a bunch of, it's a nice story, but it's not true. And
Yeah.
so, I had to crash and burn. I did. I
Mm,
had to crash and burn, and I probably took a few people with me, and I'm not proud of that. Um, and maybe we all have to go through that, but, the thing that I think made the difference for me is at some point I just said, "I choose." When my sister died, like, the night that she died, I was in her bedroom in her fiance's house. I mean, it was just a strange it could have made a bad B movie, and I'm looking at her wedding dress hanging on the transom because that's what we were there for, to go to her wedding, and we ended up at
yeah,
her funeral, um, and I was distraught, but I was alone. That was my family's dynamic. Everything was silence, and I really experienced that kind of silence as a kind of violence. Like that we were
mm,
not there for each other in our
yeah,
deepest, darkest moment, and that's very sad. And so, but in that night when I couldn't sleep, I did. I said, God, if there is a God, please give me something. I need something. And
yeah,
and I did. I heard 4 words, say yes to life. And I heard it in like literally like it was I believe it came from deep within, but it was like a booming voice, like a command.
yeah.
Say
Capital YES.
say
Yeah,
yes to life. And my response was, I have no clue what that means. I have no clue how to do it, but okay.
but
So
you're curious. Yeah,
So, okay, because I don't know what else to do anyway, and so,
yeah.
yep, I was 24 and I put a stake in the ground and said, "I'm gonna figure out how to say yes to life."
Mhm.
And it was a clunky process for the first for for way too long, but that's been my journey, and every morning I get up now, it's part of my morning meditation and my mantra, "The feet hit the ground," and it's like I consecrate my life to saying yes to life, love, and joy, no matter what life brings, no matter what life brings. I get to have a preference, but in the end, who cares? My job is to turn toward life and say yes, and in the process, that's what I help a lot of people do.
I love that, Dory. I absolutely love that. So what, if anything, can we offer our viewers? Because I know they want more. Where can they go?
Well, for me, everything right now tends to be one-on-one, or eventually I'll be maybe reinvigorating a Facebook based community. But for right now, the best place to reach me is probably at my website. Go check out my
There we
website.
go.
Yeah,
Easy to
and
remember, DoriClass.com.
Yep, yep, DoriKlass.com, my name, class with a K, and, and, I'm working with you, as you know, on my rebrand, and I'm really looking forward to the rebrand launch of this site, which,
Yay.
I don't have anything to invite people to yet, I don't have a link yet, but save
It's
the date,
coming.
everybody, March 9th, noon Mountain Standard Time for about half an hour. I'll be doing a rebrand launch live and would love it if you join me and help me celebrate this journey I've been on
Yeah.
and that is in service to the people I'm meant to serve. Like I see this saying yes to life and saying yes to your bigness, saying yes to becoming whole, saying yes to having a healthy relationship with power and being powerful and using our power well. All of that is a result of some of the hardship I've been through and the work I've done over many years.
Yes.
And now I see that as a form of leadership. It's self leadership and self
Yeah.
mastery. And the people I work with are seasoned, successful professionals who, want to be more of the empowered and visionary leaders they aspire to be and have the impact they intend, not leave dead bodies in their wake or
Mm,
just
crash and
or
burn.
know they're leaving all this potential on the table that they haven't tapped into. And most of it has to do with who we're being, how we're showing up, and how we're relating to one another.
Yeah.
Doing stuff, what we do well, we get that. It's all the rest. And so
Oh, yeah. The
so
being and
that's
relating. Yeah.
it's time to see and be seen. It's time to go
Yes,
deeper.
yes. Well, here's where they can find you on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah,
Just
definitely,
the
definitely, and
invite's not out yet, but you'll
I'll
share it
put a
there,
notice
right?
yeah, I'll put notices on LinkedIn, I'll put notices on probably on Facebook and but just save the date, March 9th, noon, Mountain Standard Time.
I love it. I love it. And if you're curious about more of Dory's story, you can find it on my website here. It's under the insights section. But I want to thank you so much, Dory, for truly showing up authentically. That does take courage, and I call it standing in the heart of your fire, and you did that beautifully. So I'm sure so many um, learned a lot, and just it's like a breath of fresh air to have a real true conversation. So
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story and how that journey has led to your beautiful business. And it's been beautiful working with you and seeing that bigness shine. So you can check our next episode out on March 17th with Brian Perry. He's a good friend of ours. And
Very
he'll
good
be
guy.
talking, yeah, so you don't want to miss that.
Mm-mm.
He'll be talking about standing in your arena. So we all need to hear more of that. But for now, thank you so much. And thanks, Dory.
You're welcome. Thank you, Catherine.